The massive crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched toward the stars like frozen lightning. Inside the tallest spire, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with heated voices from dozens of different species. The air shimmered with translation. Fields, turning alien words into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Kyobin slammed his scaled fist on the floating podium. His red eyes glowed with anger as he looked around the circular chamber. Representatives from 50 worlds sat in their special seats, each one designed for their unique body shapes. "The outer sectors are empty space," Kyobin shouted. "We need those resources. Our people are growing hungry while perfectly good planets sit unused in the dead zones." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Kalari delegate nodded, her bird-like head, while the massive Grox representative rumbled approval through his breathing tubes. Times had been hard lately. Trade routes were failing, and many worlds needed new places to live. In the back corner, an old Vorthak named Tejo slowly stood up. His 6 arms moved carefully as age had made his joints stiff. His ancient voice cracked as he spoke through the translation field. "Young ones, you do not understand what you are saying. Those sectors are not empty. They are forbidden for good." "Reason," Kyobin turned toward the old historian with a sneer. "More of your dusty stories, Taiho? We need facts, not fairy tales from your precious archives." Tejo's large black eyes looked sad. He had served the Council for over 200 years, longer than most species even lived. His memory banks held thousands of years of galactic history, but fewer and fewer beings wanted to listen to the old warnings anymore. "The star charts mark those regions as the human domain," Tejo said slowly. "The old records are very clear about this." Laughter filled the chamber. The young Zephyrian delegate actually fell out of his chair, his tentacles wiggling with amusement. Even some of the older representatives smiled at what they thought was a joke. "Humans!" Kyobin laughed so hard his scales changed color. "The mythical bipeds who could supposedly bend space and time. The ghost warriors who could think entire fleets into existence. Come now, old friend. Even the children have stopped believing in those bedtime stories." "The legends say they had ships made of dark matter," added the Kalari delegate, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "and they could speak directly into your mind from across the galaxy." "My favorite part," said a young Altari Council member, "is how they supposedly had weapons that could crack planets in half, but they were so peaceful they never used them except to defend others." The chamber filled with more laughter. Tejo felt his heart sink as he watched these young beings dismiss 3,000 years of carefully preserved warnings. He had read the original reports, seen the old recordings, but to them, humans were just stories told to children. "The humans were real," Tejo insisted, his voice growing stronger. "They controlled nearly half the galaxy before the Great Silence. Every world in the outer sectors once belonged to them. The charts still show their names for the stars." "If they were so powerful," Kyobin challenged, "where are they now? What happened to these amazing mythical warriors?" Tejo's shoulders sagged. This was the question he could never answer. The record simply stopped. One day, human ships were everywhere, protecting trade routes and keeping peace between warring species. The next day, they were gone. No battles, no distress calls, no explanation. Just empty space where the most advanced civilization in the galaxy used to live. "I do not know," Tejo admitted. "But the old archives warn against entering their territory. There are automated systems, guardian posts, things we do not understand. Automated systems that are 3,000 years old?" The Grox representative's voice boomed through his translator. Even if humans were real, their technology would be ancient scrap by now. The council leader, a wise Mothak female named Sun-Hee, raised her hand for silence. Her 4 arms moved in the traditional gesture of respect as she addressed Tai-Ho. Old friend, we all honor your knowledge, but our people are suffering now today. The Kelton system needs a new homeworld after their sun began to die. The Zephyrians have outgrown their underwater cities. We cannot let fear of old legends stop us from helping our citizens. Tai-Ho looked around the chamber one last time. He saw determination in every alien face, but also desperation. These were not evil beings. They truly needed new worlds for their growing populations, but they did not understand what they were walking into. At least send scouts first, Tai-Ho pleaded. Small ships. Let them map the sectors carefully before sending colony vessels. Kyobin waved a dismissive hand. Of course we will scout first. We are not foolish. But we will not be stopped by stories of ghost ships and mythical guardians. The vote was swift and predictable. 43 worlds agreed to begin expansion into the outer sectors. Only 7 voted against, mostly the older species who still remembered fragments of the old warnings. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Tai-Ho remained in his seat. His assistant, a young Vorthak named Min-Su, approached. Carefully. Master, perhaps they are right, Min-Su said gently. Maybe the humans really were just legends, stories that grew larger with each telling. Tai-Ho shook his ancient head. No, young one. I have seen the recordings. Fuzzy and old, yes, but real. Human ships moving like liquid light. Human voices speaking in perfect harmony across entire star systems. They were real, and they were incredible. Then where did they go? That is what worries me, Tai-Ho whispered. What could make beings that powerful simply vanish? And what happens when we wake up whatever made them leave? Far beyond the crystal spires of Nexus Prime, in the dark space between stars, ancient sensors registered the Council's decision. Machines that had waited in silence for 3,000 years began to wake up. Deep in hidden bases, scattered across the forbidden sectors, automatic systems started running startup sequences. On a dozen dead worlds that the Council thought were empty, monitoring stations came to life. Scanner arrays that had been built by human hands so long ago that most species had forgotten humans ever existed began to sweep the galaxy. They detected the alien ships already moving toward the borders of what had once been human space. The Watchers had awakened. Soon the galaxy would remember why the outer sectors had stayed empty for so long. The humans had not vanished. They had been waiting, and now, 3,000 years later, their ancient guardians were stirring once again. Legends were about to become very real. The dusty surface of Kepler 442c stretched endlessly under its pale orange sun. Dr. Jae-won crouched beside an ancient stone wall, carefully brushing centuries of accumulated dirt away from carved symbols. Her 6-fingered hands moved with practiced care as she worked. Da-Yoon, come look at this, she called to her research partner. Her voice carried easily in the thin atmosphere, though both Kalari needed breathing masks to work on the surface. Da-Yoon looked up from the scanning device she had been calibrating. Her bright yellow feathers rustled with excitement as she hurried over to examine Jae-won's discovery. As the expedition's symbol expert, she had been hoping for exactly this kind of find. These markings, Da-Eun whispered, her beak clicking, with amazement. They matched the scripts from the old archives, the ones Tai-Ho showed us before we left. Jae-won nodded, her heart beating faster. Human script. But that is impossible. Humans are myths. Everyone knows that. They had been working on this dead world for 6 weeks now, sent by the Galactic Council to survey suitable planets for colonization. The world had perfect gravity, decent air, and good soil. It should have been an ideal place for new settlements. But the longer they stayed, the more questions arose. The cities were wrong, for one thing. They were clearly built by bipeds, which was rare enough, but the doorways were the wrong height for most known species. The stairs had odd spacing. Even the furniture they had found in preserved buildings seemed designed for beings exactly like the mythical humans from old stories. "Look at the preservation," Dayun said, running her scanner over the carved wall. "This stone should have crumbled to dust ages ago, but something has been protecting it. The molecular structure is completely stable." Jae-won stood up and looked around the ruins. The ancient city spread out before them, its buildings still standing after thousands of years. No other archaeological site in the galaxy was preserved this well. It was as if time itself had been slowed down here. The burial. "Site readings are ready," called Yeon-su, their junior researcher, from across the excavation area. His voice sounded nervous through the comm system. Jae-won and Da-yoon walked over to where Hyeon-su was standing beside a carefully exposed grave. The body inside was clearly humanoid, but the bone density readings on his scanner showed numbers. That made no sense. "These bones are 3 times denser than any known species," Hyeon-su reported. "The skull capacity is enormous. And look at the muscle attachment points. This being was incredibly strong." Da-eun leaned closer to examine the remains. Bipedal, approximately 2 meters tall. The leg bones show they were built for running long distances, but also for jumping. Look at these heel bones. Jae-won was studying the skull. The brain case is huge, much larger than most species, and these eye sockets, they were forward-facing like predators, but the teeth show they ate both meat and plants. "Just like the old legends describe humans," Hyun-Soo said quietly. The 3 researchers looked at each other. None of them wanted to say what they were all thinking. If these bodies were real, then humans had not been myths. They had been a real species, living on real worlds, building real cities. Over the next few days, they found more evidence. Tools made from unknown metals that had not rusted or worn down. Weapons that still held energy charges after millennia. Most disturbing of all, they found children's toys and artwork that showed humans living alongside other species peacefully. "They were not conquerors," Da-eun observed, as she studied a carved mural showing humans and other aliens working together. "These images show cooperation, not domination." Jae-won was examining what appeared to be a school building. They taught their children about other species. Look at these learning materials. They have accurate information about dozens of different alien races. "Then why did they disappear?" Hyun-soo asked. "If they were so advanced and so peaceful, what happened to them?" The answer came from an unexpected source. While cataloging artifacts in what appeared to be a government building, Da-yoon found a sealed chamber behind a hidden door. Inside were dozens of data storage devices, still functional after all these years. The devices contained records in human script, but also translations into several other alien languages. As Da-eun decoded the files, the story they told sent chills through all 3 researchers. The humans had not disappeared mysteriously. They had left voluntarily all at once in response to something called the Devourer War. The records spoke of an enemy from outside the galaxy, something that consumed entire civilizations. The humans had fought this enemy before and knew They would return. They evacuated, Jaewon said as she read through the translated files. All of them. Every human in the galaxy packed up and left for somewhere called the Deep Colonies. But why abandon everything? Da-un wondered. They could have taken these artifacts, these buildings, everything. Hyun-soo found the answer in another file. They left it all as a message, a warning to whoever came after them. They knew other species would eventually find these worlds. The final entry in the human records was the most chilling of all. It was a message addressed to future galactic citizens and signed by someone called Fleet Admiral So Young of the Human Colonial Defense Force. The message was simple but terrifying. We go now to prepare for the return of the Devourers. When they come again, we will be ready. Watch the skies. When the stars begin to go dark, we will return to stand with you as we stood with your ancestors. The guardian spirits do not abandon their duty. Jaewon felt her feathers stand on end as she read those words. Guardian spirits. That is exactly what the old legends called humans. They immediately sent their findings to the Galactic Council, but the response was disappointing. Director Min-ho of the Science Division reviewed their report and dismissed most of it as interesting but inconclusive. The bone density readings could be errors, Min-ho told them over the long-range communicator. The preservation could be natural mineral processes, and these data files could be elaborate fakes left by some prankster species. But Director, Jaewon protested, the evidence shows you found some old ruins and some stories, Min-ho interrupted. Nothing more. I am classifying this site as a minor archaeological find. Pack up your equipment and move on to the next survey world. Da-eun could not believe what she was hearing. You are ordering us to ignore the most significant discovery in galactic history? I am ordering you to do your jobs, Min-ho replied coldly. Survey worlds for colonization. Leave the fantasy stories to the entertainment industry. Within a week, Council security forces arrived to seal the site. The ruins were declared off-limits, and all the artifacts were confiscated. The official report stated that Kepler 442c was unsuitable for colonization due to unstable geological conditions. But Jaewon had made copies of the most important files before the security forces arrived. As their ship left the dead world behind, she looked back at the ancient human city one last time. They were real, she whispered to herself, and according to these records, they are still out there somewhere. Deep in space, far beyond the range of Council sensors, the automated monitoring station on Kepler 442c registered the alien visitors' departure. It had detected their excavation activities and recorded their conversations. Now it transmitted a simple message into the deep void. Contact confirmed. Archive accessed. Initiating Phase 1 protocols. On a dozen other worlds, similar messages began transmitting. The ancient network was awakening, and somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, those messages were being received. The fortress world of Terra Secundus hung hidden behind the Serpent's Eye Nebula like a secret waiting to be told. The massive station rotated slowly, its dark metal hull absorbing starlight rather than reflecting it. To any outside observer, it would look like just another dead asteroid. That was exactly the point. Fleet Admiral So Young stood on the observation deck of the command center, watching the nebula's purple gases swirl around their hidden base. Her gray hair was pulled back in the traditional military style her grandmother had taught her, and her sharp eyes missed nothing as they scanned the tactical displays. Behind her, Captain Dong-hyun approached with a data tablet in his hands. His young face looked worried as he reviewed the latest reports from their deep space monitoring network. The news he carried would change everything they had built during their long exile. "Admiral, the sensor network is reporting multiple contacts," Dong-hyun said quietly. "Alien vessels have entered the outer boundary zones in 17 different sectors." So-young turned away from the nebula view and took the tablet from him. Her experienced eyes quickly scanned the data, noting ship configurations and movement patterns she had never seen before. These were not the species humanity remembered from the old galaxy. "How many different civilizations?" she asked. "At least 12 distinct ship designs? Maybe more. Our AI systems do not recognize any of them from the historical databases." So-young nodded slowly. They had known this day would come eventually. Humanity had been hiding in the deep void for over 3,000 years, waiting and preparing. But they had always known that other species would eventually expand into what had once been human space. "What about the archive worlds?" So-young asked. "Any contact with the warning sites?" Dong-hyun's expression grew more serious. "Yes, Admiral. The Kepler 442c monitor station reports that aliens excavated the ruins there. They accessed the historical archives before Council security forces sealed the site. So someone out there now knows we were real." So-young walked over to the massive tactical display that dominated the command center. The holographic map showed hundreds of star systems, with red indicators marking where alien vessels had been detected. General Kyung-soo entered the command center at that moment, his heavy boots echoing on the metal deck. The older man's scarred face showed the wisdom of someone who had spent decades training for a war he hoped would never come. "Admiral, I have reviewed the contact reports," Kyung-soo said as he approached. "These aliens are not just exploring. They are establishing colonies, mining operations, permanent settlements." So-young studied the data more carefully. The alien expansion was happening fast, much faster than humanity had expected. These new species were clearly desperate for resources and living space. "Any sign of the devourers?" she asked quietly. Both men shook their heads. That was the question that haunted every human leader. They had retreated from the galaxy to prepare for the return of the ancient enemy that had driven them into exile. But the devourers had not returned yet, and now other species were claiming human territory. "What are your recommendations?" So-young asked her senior officers. General Kyung-soo was the first to speak. "We should maintain our isolation. We have been safe here for 3 millennia. Why risk exposure now? These new species do not even believe we exist." Captain Dong-hyun disagreed. "With respect, General, our mission was to protect the galaxy from the devourers. If these aliens establish large populations in our former territory, they will be sitting targets when the enemy returns." "That assumes the devourers will return," Kyung-soo replied. "Maybe we won the war so completely that they decided to stay in their own galaxy." So-young looked at the tactical display again. Red warning lights marked dozens of alien colonies spreading across space that humanity had once called home. These beings had no idea what they were walking into. "Launch a reconnaissance mission," she decided finally. "I want to know what these new species are like. Are they peaceful? Aggressive? Do they have the technology to defend themselves if needed?" "Who do you want to command the mission?" Dong-hyun asked. "Lieutenant Hyun-woo. Take him off the training rotation and give him a stealth frigate. I want him to observe these aliens without being detected. Full passive reconnaissance only." Kyung-soo frowned. "Admiral, once we send scouts into the galaxy, there is no going back. They will eventually be detected. The secret of our survival will be exposed. So, Young nodded. She understood the risks. Humanity had stayed hidden for 3,000 years by avoiding all contact with the outside galaxy. But they had also spent those years preparing for the return of an enemy that consumed civilizations. If that enemy came back and found the galaxy full of unprepared species, the slaughter would be unimaginable. Prepare the silent storm for immediate departure, she ordered Dong-hyun. Stealth configuration. No weapons signatures. I want Lieutenant Hyun-woo to be a ghost among ghosts. As Dong-hyun left to prepare the mission, Kyung-soo remained behind. The old general looked troubled as he studied the tactical display. Admiral, what if we are wrong? He asked quietly. What if the Devourers never return? We will have revealed ourselves for nothing. So Young was quiet for a long moment. She had been asking herself the same question every day for the past 20 years since taking command. The weight of an entire species' survival rested on her decisions. General, my grandmother fought in the original Devourer War. She saw what they did to entire star systems. Billions of beings consumed in hours. If there is even a small chance they might return, we have a duty to be ready. She turned back to the nebula view, watching the purple gases swirl in patterns that had remained unchanged since humanity first arrived here. Somewhere out there, beyond the safe darkness of their hiding place, alien civilizations were building, new homes on worlds that still remembered human voices. Besides, So Young added softly, the monitoring network is already showing strange readings from the galactic rim, energy signatures that do not match any known technology. If I am right, we may not have much time left to prepare. 3 days. Later, the Silent Storm departed Terra Secundus under full stealth protocols. Lieutenant Hyun-woo commanded a crew of 12, all volunteers who understood they might never return home. Their ship was painted with special coatings that absorbed scanner beams, and its engines ran so quietly they barely registered on their own sensors. As the stealth frigate disappeared into the darkness between stars, Admiral So Young watched from the command center. For the first time in 3,000 years, humanity was reaching out to the galaxy they had abandoned. Phase 2. Protocols are now active, she announced to the command staff. All monitoring stations to high alert. Begin awakening the reserve fleets. Deep in the hidden shipyards of Terra Secundus, lights began coming on in massive construction bays that had been dark for centuries. Automated systems started running diagnostics on ships that had been built with technology far beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. The sleeping giant was beginning to stir, and soon the galaxy would learn that some legends were more real than anyone imagined. The silent storm drifted through space, like a shadow given form. Lieutenant Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the stealth frigate, watching the busy trade routes of the Kelton system through their advanced sensors. After 2 weeks of careful observation, his team had learned much about these new galactic civilizations. Sir, I'm picking up another convoy, reported Ensign Boram from the sensor station. Her young face was illuminated by the soft blue glow of her displays as she tracked the movement of alien ships. Hyun-woo moved to look over her shoulder at the tactical readout. What species? Mixed convoy. Looks like Kalari freighters with a Grox escort. Same pattern we've been seeing all week. Commander Yu-jin, the ship's intelligence officer, looked up from her analysis station. Her sharp mind had been working to understand the complex political situation in this new galaxy. The trading patterns suggest these species are cooperating peacefully, very different from the old records. Hyun-woo nodded. The historical databases from Terra Secundus painted a picture of a galaxy often torn by war and conflict. But these new civilizations seemed to have created something better. They traded freely, shared technology, and worked together through their Galactic Council. It almost made him feel hopeful. Almost. Movement on the perimeter, Boram announced suddenly. 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration unknown. The main display showed 3 sleek vessels with predatory lines and dark hulls. They moved with the fluid grace of hunters approaching prey. Hyunwoo had never seen ships like these before, but something about them made his skin crawl. "They're targeting the convoy," Yujin reported, her voice tense. "Weapons charging." The unknown ships opened fire without warning. Bright energy beams lanced across space, striking the Kalari freighters before they could even raise their shields. The Grok's escort vessel tried to return fire, but its weapons seemed pitifully weak compared to the attackers. Yunwoo watched in horror as one of the freighters broke apart, its cargo spilling into the void. Escape pods launched frantically from the dying ship, carrying civilian survivors away from the destruction. "Sir, we should do something," pleaded Boram. "Those are innocent traders." "Our orders are strict," Yujin reminded him. "Observe only. No contact with alien species under any circumstances." Hyunwoo felt torn between duty and conscience. Admiral So Young had been very clear about maintaining their cover. But watching innocent beings die while he did nothing went against everything humanity stood for. The decision was made for him when one of the attacking ships turned toward the escape pods. Its weapons began charging again, preparing to murder. "The survivors. All hands to battle stations," Hyunwoo ordered. "Bring us out of stealth. Target the lead attacker." "Sir, if we reveal ourselves," Yujin began. "I know the consequences," Hyunwoo cut her off. "But I will not watch civilians be slaughtered." Humanity did not survive 3,000 years just to become cowards. The silent storm shimmered into visibility as its stealth systems deactivated. To the alien ships below, it must have seemed like a ghost materializing from empty space. The human frigate was smaller than the attackers, but its weapons were far more advanced. "Fire!" Hyunwoo commanded. Twin beams of coherent energy struck the lead attacker, punching through its shields like they were made of paper. The alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash, its debris scattering across the trade route. The remaining attackers turned to face this new threat, but they were already doomed. The Silent Storm's weapons fired again, and within seconds, both ships were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. In the sudden silence that followed, Hyunwoo stared at the tactical display. The convoy was saved, but humanity's secret was now exposed. Someone had seen a human ship in action. "Sir, we're being scanned," Boram reported. "The survivors are trying to identify us." "Block their scans and prepare to jump to hyperspace," Hyunwoo ordered. "We need to get out of here before more ships arrive." As the Silent Storm activated its jump drive, Yujin intercepted the radio chatter from the rescued convoy. The alien voices were excited and confused as they tried to understand what had just happened. "Did you see those weapons?" came a Kalari voice through the translator. "Nothing in the galaxy fires that fast." "The ship just appeared from nowhere," added a Grok's captain. "Our sensors show empty space, then suddenly there was a warship." "Who were they?" "I don't recognize that hull configuration." As the human ship disappeared back into hyperspace, the alien survivors were left to wonder about their mysterious saviors. Within hours, their reports had reached the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime. Council Security Chief Wanbin read the incident reports with growing concern. Ships that could appear and disappear at will. Weapons that could destroy heavy cruisers in single shots. Technology that seemed impossible by current standards. Pirates with experimental stealth systems, suggested his aide. One bin shook his head. Pirates don't save convoys. They attack them. This was someone else. Someone with access to very advanced technology. Over the following weeks, more reports came in from across the galaxy. A mysterious ship helping a colony world fight off raiders. Ghost vessels escorting vulnerable medical transports through dangerous space. Each time, witnesses described the same impossible technology and the same strange ship designs. Sung Min, a freelance information broker, was the first to notice the pattern. He worked from a small office on a trading station in the Zeta Reticuli system, buying and selling information to anyone willing to pay. His specialty was connecting seemingly unrelated events to find hidden truths. 17 separate incidents. In 12 sectors, he told his contact, Council Intelligence Agent Haya Jin, during one of their regular meetings. All involving unknown vessels with similar capabilities. Haya Jin studied the data files Sung Min had compiled. As a trained intelligence analyst, she could see the pattern he was describing. Someone was systematically scouting Galactic Council territory, but they were also helping protect innocent ships. "What do you think it means?" she asked. Sung Min leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I think someone has been watching us. Someone with technology we can't understand. And for some reason they've decided to reveal themselves." Back on Terra Secundus, Admiral So Young reviewed Lieutenant Hyun Woo's mission report with mixed feelings. Her orders had been violated, but she could not fault his actions. Humanity had always stood for protecting innocent life, even at great personal cost. "What's the galactic reaction?" she asked General Kyung-soo. "Confusion, mostly. Some species think it's a new form of piracy. Others believe it's experimental council black ops. A few are starting to wonder if the old legends might be true." So Young nodded. The plan had always been to reveal themselves eventually, but she had hoped to control the timing better. Now events were moving faster than she had anticipated. "Sir," Captain Dong Hyun entered the command center with urgent news. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the galactic rim. Something big is coming." So Young felt her blood run cold. She had been hoping they would have more time to prepare, more time to assess these new species and their capabilities. But the readings on Dong Hyun's scanner showed patterns she recognized from the old war records. "How long until they reach inhabited space?" she asked quietly. "At current speed? 6 months, maybe less." The Devourers were returning, just as the ancient human records had predicted. And when they arrived, they would find a galaxy full of unprepared species who still thought humans were myths. So Young walked to the tactical display and activated the emergency command protocols that had waited 3,000 years to be used. "All ships to full readiness," she announced. "Begin Phase 3, mobilization. It's time to go home." Seung Min's fingers flew across his holographic interface as he connected data points from across 17 sectors of space. His small office on Trading Station Omega was cluttered with information displays, each one showing a different piece of the puzzle he had been trying to solve for weeks. His contact at Council Intelligence, Agent Haya Jin, sat across from his desk reviewing the compiled reports. Her trained eye could see the pattern emerging from what most people dismissed as random incidents. "Look at this," Sung Min said, highlighting a cluster of sighting reports on his main display. Every single mysterious ship encounter happened within 48 hours of a pirate attack or some other threat to civilian vessels. Hyojin leaned forward to study the timeline more closely. You think they're actively patrolling, protecting trade routes? More than that. Watch this. Seung-min activated a three-dimensional map showing ship movements over the past month. Ghost-like trail markers indicated where the mystery vessels had been detected. They're not just responding to threats, they're predicting them. The pattern was undeniable. The unknown ships appeared in systems hours or even days before attacks occurred, positioning themselves perfectly to intervene. It suggested intelligence-gathering capabilities far beyond anything the Galactic Council possessed. Who has technology like this? Hyojin wondered aloud. Before Seung-min could answer, every display in his office suddenly lit up with urgent alerts. Emergency broadcasts were coming in from the Rim worlds, messages that made both of them go cold with terror. The first transmission was from Captain Bum-Soo of the cargo hauler Star Dancer, his voice cracking with panic as he transmitted. From the Epsilon Eridani system. Mayday! Mayday! This is the Star Dancer requesting immediate assistance. Unknown vessels have entered the system. They're not like anything in our databases. Oh, gods, they're attacking the colony. The transmission cut to static, but more reports were flooding in from across the galactic rim. Words like biomechanical ships and they're consuming everything appeared in message after message. Hyojin was already on her emergency communicator, trying to reach Council headquarters. This is Agent Hyojin reporting a code black emergency at the Rim worlds. We need immediate military response. But even as she spoke, both she and Seung-min knew it was too late. The Council's fastest ships were days away from the outer systems. Whatever was attacking the colonies would be finished with its work long before help could arrive. That was when the impossible happened. On the main display showing the Epsilon Eridani system, new contacts appeared. Ships that seemed to materialize. From empty space itself, moving with fluid grace toward the attacking vessels. The energy signatures were like nothing in the Council databases, but Seung-min recognized them immediately. "The ghost ships," he whispered. "They're there." What followed was the most one-sided battle in recorded galactic history. The mysterious defenders engaged the attackers with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Coherent energy beams that punched through any defense, missiles that could change direction in impossible ways, ship movements that defied everything anyone thought they knew about space combat. Within minutes, the attacking force was destroyed. But instead of disappearing again like they had in previous encounters, the mysterious ships remained visible. They were helping evacuate civilians from the burning colony world. "By all the stars," Hyojin breathed as she watched the tactical display. "Look at those ship designs." Seung-min was already comparing the hull configurations to historical databases. What he found made his hands shake as he typed. "The proportions match," he said quietly. "These ships look exactly like the vessels described in the old human legends. The same sleek lines, the same weapon placements, even the same engine configurations." Before Hyojin could respond, her communicator chirped with an incoming priority message from Council headquarters. Director Minho's voice sounded strained as he spoke. "Agent Hyojin, we need you back at headquarters immediately. We've just received first contact protocols from the unknown vessels at Epsilon Eridani." "First contact protocols?" Hyojin repeated. "They're requesting permission to speak with our leadership, and they're using communication codes that are 3,000 years old." Back at Epsilon Eridani, Lieutenant Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Silent Storm as his crew coordinated the civilian evacuation. The colony world below was burning in several places, but they had managed to save most of the population. Commander Eugene approached with a grim expression. "Sir, our sensors are detecting more of those biomechanical ships approaching from the rim." This was just the advance force. Hyun Woo nodded. They had all hoped the Devourers would never return, but the evidence was undeniable. The ancient enemy was back, and they were just as terrifying as the historical records described. "Signal Terra Secundus," he ordered. "Tell Admiral So Young that the Devourers have returned in force. Full invasion protocols are now active." As his communications officer sent the message, Yunwoo looked down at the alien refugees his crew was helping to evacuate. Kalari families, Grox workers, Altari children, all of them looking up at human ships with wonder and gratitude. 3,000 years ago, humanity had fought this enemy to protect species just like these. Now they would do so again. On the main display, dozens of new contacts were appearing at the edge of the system. The Devourer main force was arriving, their biomechanical ships pulsing with malevolent energy as they prepared to consume everything in their path. "All human ships, prepare for combat," Hyunwoo announced over the fleet channel. "Today, the galaxy learns that some legends are very, very real. The battle for Epsilon Eridani was about to begin, and with it, humanity's return to the galactic stage. But this time they were not fighting alone. As the last civilian transport ships jumped to hyperspace carrying alien refugees to safety, the galaxy finally understood what the old stories had been trying to tell them. The humans had never been myths. They had been guardians, watching from the shadows, waiting for the day their protection would be needed again. And now that day had come. On Nexus Prime, Emergency Council leader Sun Hee received the reports with growing amazement. The mysterious ships were not only real, they were offering to coordinate with Council forces to defend against this new threat. "Send our response," she ordered. "Tell them the Galactic Council accepts their offer of alliance, and tell them we're sorry we forgot." In the darkness between stars, massive shapes began moving toward the inner galaxy. The Devourers had returned with a hunger that had grown during their long absence, but this time they would find the galaxy was not as defenseless as they expected. Humanity was coming home. The crystal spires of Nexus Prime had never seen such chaos. Emergency Council leader Sun Hee stood in the center of the command chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the destruction spreading across the galaxy's rim worlds. Each red indicator on the tactical map represented a system under attack by the biomechanical horror fleet that had emerged from deep space. 17 worlds lost in the past week, reported Defense Coordinator Jin A., her voice tight with stress. "The Kepler colonies are completely dark, no survivors." Chancellor Ju Won, hastily recalled from his diplomatic mission to handle the crisis, studied the advancing enemy formations with growing dread. The biomechanical ships moved unlike anything in their databases, flowing across space like liquid metal seeking prey. "What do our military analysts say about their capabilities?" he asked. General Wu Jin, the Council's senior military commander, activated a detailed battle report. His weathered face showed the strain of watching his forces get systematically destroyed. "Our weapons barely scratch their hulls. Their shields adapt to our energy frequencies within minutes, and their ships seem to regenerate damage during combat." He paused, looking around the chamber. "Chancellor, we're losing this war faster than our computers can calculate casualty reports." In the corner of the chamber, Dr. Su Jin was studying. biological analysis data from the few intact enemy ship fragments they had managed to recover. As the Council's chief xenobiologist, she had been trying to understand what they were facing. "These aren't ships in any sense we understand," she announced to the chamber. "They're living organisms, creatures bred for war and shaped into spacecraft. They literally eat the materials they destroy to grow stronger." Sun-Hee felt her hopes sink even lower. How do we fight something like that? Before anyone could answer, an aide rushed into the chamber carrying an urgent message tablet. "Chancellor, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessels. They want to address the full emergency council." The chamber fell silent. After 3,000 years of myths and legends, they were about to hear from humanity directly. "Chancellor," Ju-Wan nodded slowly. "Put them through." The main holographic display shifted to show a woman in an unfamiliar military uniform standing on what appeared to be a starship bridge. Her graying hair was pulled back in a severe military style, and her eyes held the weight of command that came from protecting an entire species. "I am Fleet Admiral So Young of the Human Colonial Defense Force," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I am speaking to you from our command vessel approaching the Nexus system." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The humans were not just real. They were here, in their home system. 3,000 years ago, my people fought the creatures you now call the Devourers. We knew they would return eventually, which is why we withdrew from the galaxy to prepare for this day. We offer our assistance in defending your worlds." Chancellor Ju-Wan found his voice first. "Admiral, the Council gratefully accepts your offer of alliance. What do you need from us?" So Young's expression grew grim. "Complete tactical data on all Devourer encounters, fleet positions of your remaining military assets, and authorization to coordinate our forces with yours for maximum effectiveness." General Wu Jin stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, our combined fleets are barely slowing them down. What makes you think adding your ships will change the outcome?" For the first time, Admiral So Young smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "General, you've been fighting the advanced scouts. The real Devourer fleet is still 6 weeks away. What you've seen so far are just the creatures they send ahead to weaken their prey before the main feeding begins." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. If what they had been fighting was just the beginning, the full invasion would be unstoppable. "However," So Young continued, "we have spent 3 millennia preparing for exactly this scenario. Our weapons are designed specifically to counter Devourer adaptations. Our ships are built to fight enemies that can regenerate battle damage, and we remember the tactics that worked in the First War." She paused, looking directly at Chancellor Ju-Wan through the holographic display. "But we cannot do this alone. We need your species to evacuate non-essential worlds and consolidate your populations on defendable planets. We need your industrial capacity to produce supplies for an extended war. Most importantly, we need you to trust us when we tell you how to survive what is coming." Dr. Su-Jin had been studying the biological data again. "Admiral, our analysis suggests the Devourers consume organic matter to fuel their reproduction. How do we prevent them from using our own casualties against us?" "Plasma incineration of all battlefield casualties," So Young replied immediately. "Nothing with organic compounds can be left intact after an engagement. The creatures can rebuild themselves from even microscopic remains." General Wu Jin looked skeptical. "That seems like an extreme measure." "General, in the First War we made the mistake of trying to take prisoners for interrogation. The captured devourers consumed the crews of 3 research stations before we learned better. These creatures do not surrender, they do not negotiate, and they do not show mercy. The only way to fight them is to match their ruthlessness. Chancellor. Ju Wan made a decision that would change galactic history. Admiral So Young, the Galactic Council hereby grants you supreme tactical command of all Allied forces. What are your orders? Begin immediate evacuation of all worlds within 50 light years of the Rim territories. Establish defensive positions around your major industrial worlds. And prepare your people for a war unlike anything your species have ever experienced. As the transmission ended, the chamber remained silent for several moments. They had just placed their entire civilization under the command of a species most of them had believed was mythical. Do we have any choice? Sun He asked quietly. General Wu Jin was studying the tactical displays. Our casualty projections show total defeat within 3 months if current trends continue. If the humans can actually fight these things effectively, then we follow their lead, Chancellor Ju Wan declared. Send immediate orders to all council worlds. Begin emergency evacuations immediately. And pray to whatever gods you believe in that these humans know what they're doing. Deep in space, the human defense fleet was already moving into position. Hundreds of ships that had been waiting in the darkness for 3,000 years were finally coming home. Their crews were the descendants of the warriors who had fought the Devourers before, and they carried with them weapons and knowledge that the current galaxy could barely comprehend. On Terra Secundus, the massive shipyards were running at full capacity for the first time in millennia. Automated construction systems were building vessels at a rate that seemed impossible, each one designed with hard-learned lessons from the first Devourer War. Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the approach to Nexus Prime. Behind her, the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history. Admiral, Captain Dong Hyun reported, all battle groups report ready for combat. The galaxy is about to see what 3,000 years of preparation can accomplish. So, Young nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays showing both the approaching Devourer main fleet and the scattered alien populations they had sworn to protect. Signal all ships, she ordered. This is Admiral So Young to all human forces. Today we fulfill the promise our ancestors made. Today we remind the galaxy why the darkness feared to face us. Today we show the Devourers that some prey fights back. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The dying world of Kepler-7 hung in space like a wounded animal, its surface scarred by biomechanical mining operations that had been consuming the planet's crust for days. Devourer harvester ships moved across the surface like metal parasites, converting everything they touched into raw materials for their growing fleet. In orbit above the burning world, the surviving ships of the Galactic Council's Third Defense Fleet fought desperately against impossible odds. Commander Kyo Bin watched from the bridge of his heavy cruiser Star Guardian as another of his escorts was torn apart by Devourer interceptors. "Sir, we've lost the Brave Heart and Ocean Wind," reported his tactical officer. "That leaves us with just 12 ships against their entire harvest fleet." Kyobin nodded grimly. His scaled hands gripped the command rail as he watched the tactical display. They had been fighting for 6 hours, and the enemy seemed to grow stronger with every ship they destroyed. The biomechanical vessels were literally feeding on the wreckage of his fleet. "Captain Young-Soo, prepare for ramming speed," he ordered his helmsman. "If we're going to die, let's take as many of them with us as possible." Young-Soo's hands moved over the navigation controls, but before he could execute the order, his sensors erupted with new contacts. Hundreds of them, appearing at the edge of the system like ghosts materializing from the void. "Sir, massive hyperspace signatures detected," called out sensor operator Haya Wan, her voice filled with amazement. "I'm reading 3,000 ships inbound." Kyobin felt his heart skip a beat. 3,000 ships was more vessels than the entire Galactic Council Navy possessed. But these weren't Council designs. The sensor readings showed hull configurations. Unlike anything in their databases, "Visual contact established," Hyawan announced. The main display shifted to show the approaching fleet, and Kyobin felt his breath catch in his throat. The ships were sleek and predatory, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with fluid grace that made even the most advanced Council vessels look clumsy by comparison. At the center of the formation was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed anything Kyobin had ever seen. Its hull stretched for kilometers, bristling, with weapon systems that seemed to bend space around them. Along its side, written in flowing script that his computer slowly translated, were the words, "Eternal Vigilance. This is Admiral So Young of the Human Colonial Defense Force to all Allied vessels," came a voice over the communications channel. "We have arrived to assist in the defense of this system. All Council ships withdraw to safe distance and prepare for fleet engagement." Kyobin could barely believe what he was hearing. The mythical humans were real, they were here, and they had brought a fleet that made his imagination real. But even with 3,000 ships, he wondered if it would be enough against the seemingly unstoppable devourers. He got his answer moments later. The human vanguard, led by Captain Dong Hyun's battlecruiser squadron, engaged the devourer harvesters with weapons that defied belief. Coherent energy beams that could slice through any known armor struck the biomechanical vessels with surgical precision. Where Kyobin's weapons had barely scratched their hulls, the human weapons carved through them like hot knives through ice. "Impossible," whispered his tactical officer as they watched devourer ships that had seemed invincible moments before explode in brilliant fireballs. But the humans were just getting started. Admiral So Young's flagship opened fire with its main batteries, and Kyobin watched in awe as beams of pure energy reached across hundreds of kilometers to strike targets with perfect accuracy. Each shot was precisely calibrated to overcome the enemy's adaptive defenses. "All human vessels advance to planetary bombardment range," came Admiral So Young's voice over the fleet channel. "General Kyung-Soo, deploy ground forces to secure the surface installations." From the massive assault carriers in the human fleet, thousands of smaller craft began launching. Kyobin's sensors showed troop transports, fighter wings, and support vessels moving toward the planet with coordinated precision that spoke of centuries of training. "How are they doing this?" asked Young-Soo, staring at the tactical display in wonder. "They fight like they've done this before," Kyobin realized. "Like they know exactly what these creatures are capable of." On the surface of Kepler-7, General Kyung-Soo's ground forces were proving that human capabilities extended far beyond their impressive ships. The soldiers moved with inhuman coordination, their powered armor allowing them to leap between buildings and strike with devastating precision. Colonel Hyun-woo, recently promoted after his reconnaissance missions, led the assault on the main Devourer processing facility. His troops moved through the biomechanical corridors like ghosts, their weapons designed specifically to disrupt the organic-mechanical hybrid technology the enemy used. "Plasma charges set on the primary cores," he reported over the comm channel. 30 seconds to detonation." The explosion that followed vaporized the entire facility, denying the Devourers access to the processed materials they needed to build more ships. Similar strikes were happening all across the planet as human forces systematically dismantled the enemy's infrastructure. In space, the battle was turning into a rout. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable against Council forces, was being systematically destroyed by weapons and tactics they had no defense against. Commander Yu Jin, directing the intelligence coordination from her position on the Eternal Vigilance, watched the battle unfold with professional satisfaction. Every human ship commander knew exactly what to do because they had trained for this scenario their entire lives. "Admiral, enemy fleet is in full retreat," she reported to Admiral So Young. "Remaining Devourer vessels are jumping to hyperspace." So Young nodded from her command position. "Let them go. We want survivors to report back to their main fleet. Let them know that the galaxy is no longer defenseless." As the battle ended and the last Devourer ships fled the system, an eerie quiet settled over Kepler-7. The human fleet maintained formation around the rescued world, their ships standing guard like ancient sentinels. Kyobin finally found his voice. "This is Commander Kyobin of the Galactic Council Third Fleet to Admiral So Young. On behalf of the survivors of this system, thank you. Without your intervention, we would all be dead." "Commander Kyobin," came So Young's reply. "This is what we came back for. 3,000 years ago, my people made a promise to protect the innocent of this galaxy. Today we begin keeping that promise. As the human fleet began establishing orbital defense positions around Kepler-7, word of the battle spread rapidly through the galactic communication networks. On dozens of worlds, beings who had never believed in the old legends watched recordings of impossible ships using impossible weapons to defeat an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. The myths had become reality. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as protectors, wielding technology that seemed like magic and fighting with the fury of those who had spent millennia preparing for this moment. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Ju Wan watched the battle recordings with a mixture of awe and relief. "Send a message to Admiral So Young," he ordered. "Tell her the Galactic Council places itself completely under human protection. Whatever they need, whatever they ask for, the answer is yes." The galaxy had rediscovered its guardians, and the Devourers were about to learn that some prey had grown very, very dangerous during their long absence. In the darkness beyond the galactic rim, the main Devourer fleet received reports from their surviving scouts. The easy feeding they had expected was no longer possible. The bipedal warriors of ancient legend had returned, and they brought with them the fury of 3,000 years of preparation. The real war was about to begin. The Nexus system had become the center of the largest space battle in galactic history. Above the crystal spires of Nexus Prime, thousands of ships from dozens of species formed defensive lines alongside the human colonial defense fleet. The combined armada stretched across millions of kilometers, a wall of steel and determination standing against the approaching darkness. Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, watching the tactical displays that showed the full scale of the Devourer main fleet. After 3,000 years of growth and preparation, the biomechanical horrors had returned with a force that dwarfed their previous invasion. Millions of ships, each one a living weapon bred for the sole purpose of consuming entire civilizations. "Fleet, status report," she commanded. Captain Dong Hyun approached with the latest battle assessments. "All human battle groups report ready for engagement." Council forces have taken positions in the secondary defense grid. Ground installations on Nexus Prime are fully activated. So Young nodded, her experienced eyes studying the enemy formation. The Devourers had learned from their defeats at the Rim Worlds. This time they were bringing overwhelming force, betting that sheer numbers could overcome human tactical superiority. Commander Eugene, intelligence assessment? Eugene looked up from her analysis station. The enemy fleet includes several new ship types we haven't encountered before. Larger vessels that appear to be mobile factories, capable of producing new attack ships during the battle itself. Adaptation, So Young murmured. They've been watching our tactics and adjusting their strategy. Good. That means they're taking us seriously. On the other side of the fleet, General Kyung-soo was coordinating with alien ground commanders who were still adjusting to working alongside humans. The planetary defense systems of Nexus Prime had been hastily upgraded with human technology, but success would depend on perfect coordination between species that had barely known each other existed a month ago. General, Colonel Hyun-woo reported, all ground defense grids are operational. If the enemy breaks through the orbital defenses, we'll be ready. Kyung-soo nodded, watching the massive shapes of Devourer vessels approaching through space. Colonel, make sure our alien allies understand the protocols. No prisoners, no intact enemy remains, and absolute incineration of all biological matter. Understood, sir. The Council forces have been briefed on human combat doctrine. Meanwhile, Dr. Soo-jin was working frantically in her laboratory aboard one of the Council science vessels. Her analysis of captured Devourer technology had revealed a critical weakness, something the humans had apparently discovered during the First War but had never shared with the historical records. The biomechanical integration has a harmonic frequency, she reported to Admiral So-young over the communication link. If we can generate a specific resonance pattern, we can disrupt their cellular cohesion on a massive scale. So-young's voice came back immediately. Can you weaponize it? Already working on it, but I need precise targeting data from your weapons systems. The frequency has to be exactly right, or it won't work. As the two fleets closed to engagement range, every being in the Nexus system held their breath. This battle would determine whether the galaxy would survive or become food for an enemy that had already consumed dozens of other galaxies across cosmic time. Enemy fleet entering maximum weapons range, announced Tactical Officer Sung-ho from his position on the Eternal Vigilance. Admiral So-young took one last look around the bridge at the faces of her crew. These were the descendants of the warriors who had fought this enemy before, and they carried in their genes the determination that had kept humanity alive through 3 millennia of exile. All ships, this is Admiral So-young, she announced, over the fleet-wide channel. Today, we fight not just for humanity, but for every species in this galaxy. Today, we prove that some things are worth defending with everything we have. All vessels, engage the enemy! The battle that followed would be remembered for thousands of years. Human ships moved through space like liquid lightning, their weapons carving through Devourer formations with surgical precision. But this time, the enemy was ready for them, adapting their tactics in real time and bringing new weapons designed specifically to counter human advantages. Captain Dong-hyun led his battlecruiser squadron in a daring assault on the enemy's mobile factories. His ships danced between massive biomechanical vessels, their weapons striking at critical junctions that would cripple the enemy's ability to reproduce during combat. Target their reproductive centers, he commanded his tactical officer. If we can stop them from building new ships, we can win through attrition. But the Devourers had learned from previous encounters. As Dong-hyun's ships closed in, hidden weapon systems revealed themselves. Biomechanical tendrils lashed out from the factory ships, trying to drag human vessels close enough to be consumed. "Evasive maneuvers!" Dong-hyun shouted as his ship rolled away from a grasping tendril that would have crushed his hull. "All ships, maintain distance and use long-range bombardment only." On the planetary surface, Colonel Hyun-woo coordinated the defense of the primary command centers with alien officers who were beginning to understand why humans had such a fearsome reputation. His troops moved with inhuman precision, their tactics adapted from 3,000 years of preparation for exactly this scenario. "Sir, Devourer ground forces are landing in Sector 7, reported one of his lieutenants. "They're using biological drop pods that can survive our atmospheric weapons." "Deploy the resonance weapons," Hyun-woo ordered. "Dr. Soo-jin's frequency generators should disrupt their cellular cohesion." The new weapons worked exactly as the scientist had predicted. The harmonic frequencies tore through Devourer forces like a scythe through wheat, causing their biomechanical bodies to literally fall apart at the molecular level. In space, Admiral So-young watched the battle unfold with professional calm. The enemy was adapting faster than expected, but human forces were still maintaining their tactical advantage. The key would be preventing the Devourers from achieving their primary objective, getting close enough to major population centers to begin mass consumption. "Commander Yu-jin, enemy movement patterns?" "They're trying to break through our lines at 3 points simultaneously," Yu-jin reported. "Classic pincer movement, but modified for their reproductive capabilities. If they break through, they'll establish breeding colonies on inhabited worlds." So-young made a decision that would define the battle. "All reserves to the breakthrough points. I don't care if it leaves our flanks exposed. We cannot let them reach the civilian populations." The human reserve fleets, held back for exactly this moment, surged forward to plug the gaps in their defensive line. Ships that had been hidden in the outer system revealed themselves, adding their firepower to the desperate defense of the core worlds. General Kyung-soo watched from the command center on Nexus Prime as the space battle reached its climax. Human and alien ships fought side by side against an enemy that seemed endless, their crews pushing their vessels beyond design limits in the desperate struggle for survival. "Sir, the enemy breakthrough at Point Delta has been contained," reported one of his staff officers. "Human reinforcements have sealed the gap. And the other 2 points?" "Holding, but barely. Casualty reports are coming in from all sectors." Kyung-soo nodded grimly. They were winning, but the cost was enormous. Every ship lost represented thousands of beings who would never see their home worlds again. But the alternative was unthinkable. If they failed here, the Devourers would consume the entire galaxy. The turning point came when Dr. Soo-jin successfully calibrated her harmonic weapons for space combat. The resonance frequencies, broadcast from specially modified human ships, began tearing apart Devourer vessels from the inside. Their biomechanical hulls simply couldn't maintain cohesion under the harmonic assault. "It's working," Soo-jin reported excitedly. "The enemy fleet is experiencing massive system failures across all ship types." Within hours, the tide of battle had turned completely. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable at the beginning of the engagement, was now in full retreat. Their remaining ships jumped to hyperspace, fleeing back toward the galactic rim and the dark space beyond. As the last enemy vessel disappeared from the sensors, an exhausted quiet settled over the Nexus system. The combined fleet had won, but at a cost that would be felt for generations. Admiral So-young stood on her bridge, looking out at the debris field that marked the greatest battle in galactic history. Around her, the survivors of dozens of species worked together to rescue crews from damaged ships and tend to the wounded. Admiral, Commander Eugene approached with the final casualty reports. We lost 30% of the human fleet. Council, losses were even higher. But the enemy losses were catastrophic. They won't be able to mount another invasion for centuries, if ever. So Young nodded, feeling the weight of command and the satisfaction of duty fulfilled. Signal all ships. Begin search and rescue operations. Every life we can save today makes this victory more complete. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Juwan addressed the reformed Galactic.